Great pleasure. Joining me, Florida Congressman Michael Waltz and Indiana Congressman Jim Banks. Gentlemen, thank you very much for this. I appreciate it. Two distinguished House members. Jim Waltz, let me just begin with you. My riff is very simple. It's very straightforward. I'm quoting distinguished people like Jason Riley and Mr. Jonathan Turley and so forth. But the principles here strike me as very important. And this is why Joe Biden has gone completely wrong. Racial preferences isn't the answer. Sexual preferences isn't the answer. Welfare is not the answer. You got to work and go for opportunities. And it seems to me the Bidens and all their pals, including Pelosi in your house, still has the story wrong. Go ahead, Mr. Banks. Fire away.
Oh,
I don't care.
Sorry, Larry.
Go ahead. Fire away. Open season.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's why the polling this week shows that about roughly 20% of the American people would support Joe Biden more if he passes the so-called Build Back Better plan. But while 80% of the American people would support him more if he actually did something to address inflation, which this president at this point has done nothing to talk about those types of issues that actually affect working Americans, everyday Americans who are begging this president to show leadership to get this country back on track. You're exactly right. It just goes to show the track that we're on under this disastrous presidency. Yeah,
and Jim Banks, I mean, welfarism is inherently inflationary. That's a point I think that's sometimes overlooked. Fewer people work because there's no workfare requirements anymore. You live on welfare. You live on entitlements. You live on social spending. You're not productive. You're not creating more goods. So all this public pump priming by the federal government and the Federal Reserve, too much money chasing few goods, is inherently inflationary, is it not?
No question. And it should baffle everybody why this administration continues to put forth bills like the fake China bill that they want to pass out of the House this week that spends hundreds of billions of dollars more on pet projects for Democrats. It has nothing to do with China. The bill mentions coral reefs more than it mentions China, by the way. It doesn't do anything to help us compete with China. It gives money to the UN Climate Fund. It gives hundreds of billions of dollars to woke universities to do God knows what when those universities are all often raided by the Chinese Communist Party for intellectual property and our research secrets, on and on. It's spending bills like that that continue to raise inflation even more and devalue the dollar. And it baffles all of us why that continues to be the way forward. The plans that this administration puts forward, they're completely nonsensical. It doesn't do anything to help America, get America back on track. It does just the opposite.
Michael Waltz, it just seems to me the Biden administration, Schumer in the Senate, Pelosi in the House, and all the assembled left-wing masses over which they tend to rule, really have no focus on national security, and they have no focus on economic security. And, you know, when I was a kid working for Reagan 40 years ago, I learned this. Strength at home equals strength abroad, but weakness at home equals weakness abroad. It seems to me we are experiencing weakness at home and weakness abroad. What say you?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. And if you understand the Chinese theory of victory, it's not a World War III type scenario of planes and ships and tanks duking it out in the Pacific, although they're preparing to do that. Their theory of victory is that America bankrupts itself, that we literally cannot afford to compete anymore, and that we can't afford to keep up with them. And much like the United States did to the Soviet Union in the 1980s, China believes it is doing to us, and this administration is playing right in their hands. And Larry, let me just add on to what Representative Banks was saying about this fake China Competes Act. It's so frustrating. I'm the ranking Republican on Research and Technology Committee. We did what the American people expect us to do in terms of rolling up our sleeves, compromising Republican and Democrat, investments into artificial intelligence, quantum computing, STEM fields. Then it passes through, and it passed by an overwhelmingly bipartisan vote out of committee. It passes through Pelosi's office, and she's now turning it into the Build Back Better backup plan and letting the progressives hang all of their nonsense on there like a Christmas tree that, to your point, is going to continue to bankrupt this country, ruin our economic security, and that is going to undercut our ability to afford to compete on the national security stage.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, more spending. Everything gets turned into these big spending bills. I think that's fabulous. But you know what? Just one follow-up before I get back to Mr. Banks. A lot of these big tech companies, we had Peter Schweitzer on, author, who's just done a book. These gigantic tech companies here, Facebook and Google and Apple and others, with respect to things like artificial intelligence, for example, that's a big, forward-looking, advanced technology fight for the future, if you will. Those guys are financing China. They're making these gigantic investments into China. And I'm just wondering whether it isn't time to apply some export controls, some CFIUS controls. You know, the Committee on Foreign Investment, on which I sat, Steve Mnuchin of Treasury ran it in the Trump years. I mean, it's even if we had a better China bill here, which we don't, I agree with you, it's like they're pouring billions and billions of dollars into China. For what? To help China's military? I don't get that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Silicon Valley is financing China. Wall Street is financing China. Larry Fink and BlackRock, J.P. Morgan and Larry Diamond, all of them. They're drunk on Chinese dollars, and there is no corporate patriotism anymore. They completely turned a blind eye to all of the human rights and social justice issues they pretend to care about. But here's the thing, Larry, is China's even a step ahead of that. They are cornering the market on chips. They're cornering the market on rare earth minerals. They are buying up all of it, all of the mines around the world. Everything the progressives say we need for a green economy will make us that much more dependent on China. The Trump administration did a lot to pull that back and bring that manufacturing back home. And now we're seeing this administration just move in the exact opposite direction.
Yeah, I mean, the Greenies, look, we have plenty of rare earths in this country. The Greenies won't let us mine for the rare earths.
Yeah,
and
the
nobody
Chinese
knows.
mining, by the way, is some of the dirtiest, most environmentally offensive types of mining in the world. So you can't have it both ways when you're talking about the environment. And the way the Chinese do it all over the world is incredibly destructive.
Jim Banks, just one more, and you two are fabulous to come on like this. The Wall Street Journal editorial, highway funding bait and switch. So Biden goes to Pittsburgh and the bridge collapses. All right, I'm not going to pin that on him because the bill is barely signed. But we're getting a lot of information in that the administering of this infrastructure bill, which you all oppose, but others put it over the finish line. The administering of this thing is anti-highway, anti-road, anti-bridge, and in fact, the one federal decision, NEPA, is which was going to clear away all the debris and get things done inside of a year or two. That's being abrogated also. So they're running with this bill in a way that nobody imagined.
Yeah, the bridge collapse in Pittsburgh was a fitting metaphor. When you get to the bottom line, you recognize that the fake infrastructure bill didn't actually give any money to fix bridges like that one. It was all about the Green New Deal agenda, high-speed rail, electric vehicles. If you don't drive an electric vehicle, if you don't use high-speed rail, then the Democrats are going to make your life a living hell until you do. I mean, the editorial in the Wall Street Journal makes the case very well. There's no money in this so-called infrastructure bill to expand highways, to do anything at all about congested traffic. That's because more traffic leads American drivers to make other choices that fit the fairy tale narrative of the left. That's what the infrastructure bill was all to begin with. We warned the American people about this, Larry. We told the American people that less than 6% of the spending in the infrastructure bill actually went to infrastructure. And now they're proving the point.
Well, Jim, I thought you knew that roads were racist. That was according to our transportation secretary, Buttigieg. I mean, roads are racist. Highways are racist. I don't know if bridges, he didn't mention bridges, but, if you're talking roads and highways, you got to throw bridges in there, too.
No question about it. My fellow Hoosier, Pete Buttigieg, once again embarrassed our state by making those statements. But they did incorporate language in the bill that went after racist highways and bridges. Perhaps the bridge in Pittsburgh was a racist bridge. I don't know. But again, it's a fitting metaphor for just how little that bill had to do with infrastructure, as we're seeing play out in real time.
So as a generic last point, we only got a few seconds left here. Michael Waltz, Save America, Kill the Bill. We still on track with that? Our philosophy, Save America, Kill the Bill? Kill all the bills.
Absolutely, Larry. And let me just make one more point on infrastructure as this thing gets implemented. You know, everybody sees the administration talks about these big top line dollars. Where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, the sausage is made is how then it's distributed out to states. And the formulas the administration's using overwhelmingly favor blue states. So voters in Florida, Tennessee, Texas are getting shortchanged. Florida, for example, receives half as much water infrastructure money as New York, despite having a bigger population. And so the formulas are tilted towards the roads and bridges, what little is going towards them, that are in the most disrepair. And the states who keep up their infrastructure and do a good job running their economy get shortchanged.
Well.
And so watch how that money gets doled out, and it's going to go to unions and blue-run states.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there, talking about highway funding, using the metaphor where the rubber meets the road. Couldn't be. Nobody's going to top that. Michael Waltz, thank you ever so much.
All right.
Jim Banks, thank you ever so much. You guys are fabulous. Appreciate it very much.